Good night, World of Warcraft Classic. Good night, Battle for Azeroth Classic. Good night, War Mode Toggle, you brave attempt to get the world to PvP again. Good night, players who played on PvP servers but still needed a safe space. Good night, bad item progression, your necklace artifact was the worst. Good night, global cooldown changes, I guess cooldowns shouldn't be that fun or convenient. Good night, uninteresting content, although I quit you so early, I hope you're better someday. Good night, Legion. Good night, weapon artifacts. You surprised me with how much I liked you. Good night, demon hunters, and world invasions involving you. Good night, free respect talent system. I'm really gonna miss you. Good night, smart tab targeting. I look forward to targeting random mobs and wiping rates again. Good night, transmog collection system. I look forward to looking like I rolled out of a garbage can again. Good night, Legion itemization team. Who was the genius who killed primary stats on rings and necks? Good night, need before greed group loot system and guildmaster loot. I don't really want to go back to loot councils. Good night, removing unusual primary stat rolls on items. Oh dude, 4 strength, 4 stam leather belt. Good night, warlords of Draenor. Good night, cross-realm groups and group finder. Your solution to low-pop servers and bunkered-down players who refuse to pay real money to relocate was sure a problem. Good night, toy box developer. You were the only one who cared how expensive those toy trains were to set down and raid. Good night, garrisons. I made so much gold and have so many transmogs because of you. Good night, tertiary stats, leech, indestructible, and the rest I don't care about. Good night, Alan Brack. You think you remember what World of Warcraft used to be, but you don't. Remember that game that had 12 million subscribers? It's still there in the past. Good night, Mists of Pandaria. Good night, tanking. Good night, threat. Good night, monk. I'm sad to see our 5th tank option gone, but at least we still have... oh shit. Good night, guardian druid forms. I'm sure hope we can still tank without you. Good night, tank damage changes. DPS races will never be the same. Good night, AoE smart heal targeting. I always wanted to heal a pet instead of topping up a mage anyways. Good night, cookie cutter specializations. Good night, stupid 3-choice talent tier systems. You were really a shitty steamrolling assault on intelligence. Good night, account-wide mounts and pets. I didn't want my mammoth on all my characters anyways. Good night, AoE looting. Please don't go. Good night, loot specializations. I never wanted an offset anyways. Good night, cop-out changes to PvP. You made it impossible to kill resto druids just because rogues were doing too much burst damage. Good night, PvP resilience and power stats. Why did you exist after a blanket 40% damage nerf? Good night, removal of Hunter Dead Zone. At least Hunter pets get to go back to being unstoppable monsters. Good night, Black Market Auction House. Thank you for letting me win a few items when every server had at least 2 Jeff Bezos. Good night, Flex Raid. Thanks for letting us raid when only 22 of 25 people showed up. Good night, Cataclysm. Good night, fixes to dot clipping. I hope Warlocks and Shadow Priests remember MF Clip and Need to Know add-ons. Good night, bag slots that aren't ammo bags. Good night, Hunters having focus. Why did they use mana in the first place? Good night, Warlocks, not having to go farm soul shards before being able to play. Good night, not needing armor pen, block rating, block value, and defense rating. Tanks need to play with Excel spreadsheets again. Good night, 100 base durability. It does make more sense for a plate to be more expensive to repair than cloth, but I know tanks never wanted to be rich anyways. Good night, shitty revamp to professions at the end of Cataclysm. Why did you go through the trouble of upgrading UI? Good night, every major city having a profession trainer and supply vendors. Good night, goblins and worgans. Thanks for changing up the race meta. Good night, Wrath of the Lich King. Good night, Death Knights. You are such a well-rounded class, and we didn't have to level you again. Good night, heirlooms. Twinks will rejoice, levelers will remorse. Good night, Blizzard Quest interface, difficulty color indicators, and map changes. Thanks for contributing one less add-on. Good night, Equipment Manager. Where did I put that offhand? Good night, start of gear score importance. Good night, dungeon meeting stones. Warlocks can now return to work. Good night, Horde Zeppelins and Stormwind Harbor and any other convenient travel system. Good night, cross-server dungeon finder, waiting to buy tank for Dire Maul. Good night, AoE damage caps. Welcome back, mage DPS master race. Good night, range on raid buffs. Everyone remembered to group up. Good night, best expansion ever. Good night, Burning Crusade. Good night to you, Guild Banks. Good night, enemy cast bars. Good night, useful keyrings. Good night, heroic dungeon modes. Good night, any sort of resilience stat. Good night, spirit-based mana regen. I can't wait for us to resume talks on MP5. Good night, World of Warcraft Classic. I'll play you soon.